Europe is facing the worst financial crisis in a generation. It all started in 2007 in the United States, where over-optimistic banks went bankrupt as a result of bad lending in the mortgage market. In September 2008, the fourth largest American investment bank, Lehman Brothers, collapsed. The crisis has since spread to the rest of the world. A vicious circle developed. Banks stopped lending to each other and credit dried up. To prevent a complete collapse of the banking system, European governments came to the rescue of their banks with urgent support on an unprecedented scale. 4.5 trillion euros, the equivalent of 37% of the EU's annual GDP, were committed between 2008 and 2011. The EU also launched a Europe-wide recovery programme to safeguard jobs and social protection levels and to support economic investment. In this way, bank runs were avoided and European savings were protected. The euro broadly maintained its value and successfully shielded Eurozone countries from the worst effects of the economic crisis by providing EU companies with a stable playing field for international trade and investment. But this effort took its toll, especially since most of the money had to be borrowed. From late 2009, the most exposed Eurozone countries began to have problems financing their debts, leading to a new development in the crisis, the sovereign debt crisis. With increasing deficits and spiralling debt, the markets lost confidence in certain governments' ability to pay back what they owed. Interest rates for their government bonds soon became unsustainable. And since many of these bonds were held by other European countries and their banks, this turned into a problem for us all. This was especially true for those countries sharing the euro as their currency. This loss of confidence led the banks to reduce their lending to businesses and private households. In 2009, the EU economy suffered its worst recession since its creation. After a brief recovery, it went into a mild recession again in early 2012. As a result, unemployment reached unprecedented levels in many parts of Europe, creating hardship and increasing poverty levels. So does that mean that the euro made the crisis worse? No, not all Eurozone countries built up excessive debts, and not all countries outside the Eurozone kept their debt under control. Being in the Eurozone meant that its members could count on the solidarity of other members. Because Eurozone economies are so interdependent, if one prospers, others will benefit. If one falters, others will suffer. That's why European leaders decided to step up common action. The key lesson of the crisis was that Europe needed to build a closer economic union to complement its existing monetary union and to ensure that public finances are sustainable. First, the EU introduced new, stronger rules to keep a tighter check on public debt and deficits, to make sure countries don't spend beyond their means. A new fiscal treaty was also signed to further strengthen confidence, limiting yearly structural deficits to 0.5% of the GDP. This crisis clearly shows that a debt-fueled economy is not sustainable. The European Commission will now make sure that the limits on debt and deficits are applied and that national budgets do not put at risk other European economies. This is the purpose of a fiscal union. Second, European financial supervision is being stepped up to ensure that banks are better capitalised, behave responsibly, and are able to lend money to households and businesses. This paves the way for a banking union to make sure that people's deposits are protected and taxpayers are not forced to pay for the failure of banks. Third, firewalls to protect the single currency are being reinforced through the European Stability Mechanism, a fund that will help Eurozone countries that are temporarily unable to borrow money on the financial markets or require support for recapitalisation of fragile banks. Loans will be provided if countries agree to reform their economies and restore their financial stability. Fourth, the European Union will pursue the objectives of the Europe 2020 strategy, implementing structural reforms to tap Europe's jobs potential, to boost productivity and competitiveness. This implies targeted investments, using EU and national funds to sustain cutting-edge research, spread innovation and latest technologies, connect up Europe's transport and energy grids, and bring high-speed internet to all Europeans, wherever they live. Restoring economic growth is no easy task, but we are working together to deliver lasting solutions to the crisis. We need sound public finances across Europe and solidarity mechanisms for crisis situations, a fiscal union. We need stronger supervision of the financial markets, a banking union. We need a deeper economic union with targeted investment to boost growth and competitiveness. The European Union is a people's project, anchored in democracy and accountable to voters. It must emerge from this crisis stronger and more united than ever. A true political union with a reinforced European Parliament, a prosperous home for its 500 million citizens, and a strong player in the world.